Hey everybody, today I'm talking about Glen More II Chronicles, which is a 2019 release from the Essenspiel, or alternatively you could have backed it on Kickstarter. Now the game is for 2 to 4 players, takes around 90 minutes to play. Now as you can tell from the name, Glen More II, this is a sequel of Glen More, which is a game I've never actually played myself, so it's not going to be a comparison video. Also, the name Chronicles refers to 8 different modules you can plug into the game to kind of increase its complexity or just add a few more elements to the game. I'm not going to go into those in any detail because I want to keep the review kind of succinct, and maybe down the line I'll do a video maybe showing which ones are better than others, or which ones I'd recommend to include in your games. But I got a chance to play Glen More II yesterday, and here are my thoughts. So. If you don't know what the game is about, it's a tile laying game. You're basically trying to build your own little kind of province, and the kind of different mechanisms on there are obviously your tile laying. You've got a time track as well, where basically the way you accumulate your tiles or take the tiles for your own little tableau is basically on that, as I said, the time track mechanism, where the person furthest behind keeps taking turns until they're not behind anymore, which is a fantastic mechanism. Games like Patchwork have used it, or Egizia and your Francis Drakes and games like that, they use it to great effect. And this one is kind of one of the, I think it's one of the forefathers of that mechanism. It is a really great mechanism, and one that is just naturally just injects a bit of meaningful decisions into your choices, because not only have you got to try and, if you really want a certain tile, you've got to jump quite a bit ahead, but maybe sacrifice a few turns so the other players catch up with you. And that is just a really neat idea. Also, you've got a bit of a stock market thing going on here as well, because you can buy and sell goods whenever you want on the market, and the more you buy, the more expensive they get, and the more you sell, the cheaper they get. So you've got that little element in there as well. And I guess more importantly is, what are you actually doing with your tiles? So basically you are picking up these tiles, maybe spending a cost on them, because some of them do cost to pick them up, and putting them on your board. There are a few placement rules. So basically they have to be orthogonal to another tile, and they also have to have a Scotsman, which is one of your meeples, in a kind of a adjacent space. So you couldn't have a Scotsman all the way over here and then place a tile over here. You kind of need to be near it in order to place something, which is a little puzzle in itself, because one of the kind of resources in the game is movement, where you have to move your Scotsman around the board in order to expand where you want to expand. But when you place a tile, not only are you going to get the instant reward by placing it, which could be resources, it could be points, it could be movement points, or maybe place more Scotsmen. But you also activate every tile surrounding that tile. And again, that can be resources, it can be maybe a scoring method where you convert resources into points. Again, it could be movement points, which you use to move your Scotsman around. And one of the kind of really cool things about this game is when you place that tile, the satisfaction of activating that tile and all the ones around it really does feel powerful. And it's just a really good kind of it's a really good feeling when you just activate something and get a bunch of points in return. And it's just like, the turns really do feel like you're doing a lot on them, which is a really good touch on a game like this. So not only are you picking up these kind of tiles for your own tableau, you can also pick up these character tiles as well. And those character tiles are really useful because not only do they count for scoring, which I'll explain in a second, but they also let you kind of expand, almost like a technology kind of method on the clan board. So you can place one of your clan tokens on one of these spaces, which will give you maybe instant resources, or they can give you permanent powers, or maybe endgame scoring methods. So you can constantly kind of increasing or almost engine building your skills, and maybe make you different than the other players, because each of those spots that you expand onto, other players can't do them as well, because they're all exclusive. So that's a really cool touch. But another wrinkle to that as well is that when you do use one of these clan spots, basically it opens up more possibilities for your opponents as well, because normally you'd have to pay a cost based on how far away those different clans are from the start area. But as you place more and more of these clan tokens on them, they kind of get cheaper, because you, instead of going from the start area, you go from where someone else's clan marker is, or where your own clan marker is. So the more you expand, as I said, the more opportunities you're offering to other players, because they can get more powerful bonuses at a cheaper rate. That might sound more complex than what it is, but I assure you it's very simple. And yeah, it's a really interesting choice about which one of these bonuses you want to go for, because they're all very, very useful. Another thing you can do is you can take tiles which they do go on your board, but they're called like landmark tiles. And those landmark tiles count as additional scoring, but they also give you bonuses as well, again, such as one-off resources or endgame scoring or different things you can do. So there's a lot to think about here. So how are you going to get your points in the game, which will obviously determine the winner? So basically you are going to score on, I think it's 4 different methods in the 4 different rounds. And then the final round, the 4th round, you score additional points as well, based on different criteria. So you are going to score points based on the number of whiskey barrels you have, the number of character tiles you have, the number of landmark tiles you have, and I think there's another method as well, which I've probably forgotten. But the cool thing about the game is that you don't score just based on the number of things you have. You score based on the comparison of what you have compared to other players, which is a really cool way of just forcing player interaction into the game. Because say I had 3 whiskey barrels, and the person in last only had 1 whiskey barrel, that's a 2 difference, which means I think I'll get 2 points. But the bigger those gaps become, the better the multipliers become. Because I think if you get a 5 difference, you go all the way up to 8 points. You get some additional bonus points there. And that's basically how those different criteria work. So you score just like that for the whiskey barrels, just like that for the number of landmark cards, just like that for the number of people tokens you have. And as I said, for the 3 rounds, that's how you'll score. But for the final round as well, you will score additional points based on the size of your map or the size of your tableau. Because not only will you, well, basically you want to be as succinct and as tight as you can on your map. Because every tile that the person with the most tiles has more than the person with the least tiles, you will lose 3 points. So the person with the smallest map is not going to score any negative points, but again, the difference between yourself and the smallest map, you're going to score -3 points for each one, which can be extremely significant. You'll also get points based on the number of coins you have at the end of the game as well. So that's basically how the game works. You're just going to keep taking very quick turns to expand your board, activate all the different abilities, trade in for points, try and build up those different scoring criteria to get more than the other players, expand yourself on that clan board to get more abilities, buy and sell stock on the market, and that's basically it. Now, obviously, you've got those chronicles that you can inject into the game as well, and they can add some really cool things, which, again, I said I'm not going to go into them too much, but you've got like a boat race in there. You've got all these different kind of Scottish thematic things you can put into there as well. And I've not really looked into them with tremendous depth, and I will go into those in a future video. But the base game alone is more than enough to sink your teeth into initially. So yeah, the choices in this game are fantastic. Just that time track method is just a great way to make your choices, because, as I said, you can keep on taking loads and loads of tiles, or you can really just go for the ones you exactly want. But at the same time, the more tiles you have at the end of the game than your opponents, you're going to lose points for. So, skipping over a bunch of tiles isn't really a bad idea. And there's also some tiles that you can use to build over existing tiles. So not only do you get a new tile, but you also don't increase your map size, which is, again, a really useful tactic to use. The player balance in the game is absolutely fantastic. All the different scoring mechanisms are really interesting, such as trading in maybe 2 different types of resources for a certain amount of points, or more than that for more points. Or maybe different goods for, there's lots of different ways to score points based on the tiles you pick up. And you can get nice little engines built in the game as well by activating certain tiles. Very, very satisfying gameplay. So yeah, in terms of its meaningful decisions, the player balance and just the mechanisms in the game are just absolutely fantastic. It is a really, it's a very simple game in its essence. It's not any convolution or any fiddly rules in it whatsoever. And I just really like the way the game flows and plays, and the way the game scores, and just the satisfaction of activating tiles, and the choices on expanding on the clan board. So as you can probably tell, I'm absolutely thrilled with this game. It is brilliant. The game also feels like it ticks along really quickly. I think when I played a 2-player game, I think it only took me about 75 minutes to play, but obviously with more players than that, it's going to take more and more time, but not too bad, because again, the same amount of tiles are being used. Uptime is excellent. Replayability, again, the base game alone is more than satisfactory, because you're going to be skipping over different tiles. You can go for different strategies based on different goods and resources you pick up. But again, you've got at least 8 or at least 9 different versions of the game you can play, and then you can combine them all, the Chronicles together, to get different games. Or you can, if you're playing with maybe less, players who don't want such a crunchy experience, you can only play with the basic Chronicles and not the more advanced ones. So you've got a lot of flexibility here, lots of variation, and lots of kind of, ways that you can tinker the game to your tastes, which is absolutely brilliant. Player interaction as well, fantastic, because, as I said, you want to try jump to those tiles that your opponent might want, but sacrifice a few turns by doing so. All the scoring is based on comparisons to other players, which again is just natural player interaction. And also the market as well, because if someone suddenly sells a bunch of goods, you know that you can buy them for cheaper. Again, great player interaction. And aesthetically as well, I really like the art direction of this game. Sometimes it's quite difficult to take a different approach on tile laying games, at least in its art style, but this one has a very different style to it. It's got this very kind of rustic, almost countryside feel to it. It's nice and green, very lush looking tiles. I absolutely love the art direction, and component quality as well, brilliant. The game has a brilliant insert that fits all the different modules in excellently. The tiles are wonderful quality. The boards are nice and thick. The cards beautifully illustrated and good card stock. So yeah, component wise, in terms of its art direction and its quality, absolutely fantastic. And theme wise as well, a great use of the kind of Scottish theme. You've got your different sheep and your cows and your whiskey, and all the modules add more Scottish kind of flavour into the game as well. So yeah, overall, this is a fantastic game. I was so happy with this one. Again, the one thing that really does stick with me is just the satisfaction of activating all the different tiles. It is so rewarding when you do so. And yeah, it's just lots to explore with this one. A great flow to the game, great strategies, loads of decisions. The puzzly aspect of moving your little Scotsman around is brilliant. Sorry, I just reminded me of one of the scoring mechanisms as well, is to get your Scotsman back to your castle when it comes to a scoring round, which is another fantastic little puzzle you have to work out, because if your Scotsmen are back on your castle board, then they're not going to be in places where you can expand so well. So you've got to really weigh up that decision in your mind about which ones you're going to keep back at your base and which ones you're going to use to explore. So yeah, another element to a fantastic game there. Just a mountain of decisions, but still has that nice feel or a nice flow to it as well, without being convoluted. And it's just lovely, elegant, fun gameplay. And yeah, it gets a very high verdict from me. I would rate this at an amazing, which is about 8.5 out of 10. And you know what? Maybe even going forward, when I start injecting all these different Chronicles into them, it could even go higher than that. So yeah, absolutely thrilled with this one. I couldn't recommend it enough. Great game, great production, looks beautiful, and yeah, just a fantastic game. That's Glen More II Chronicles by Mattias Cramer, who is a fantastic designer in his own right. So yeah, go check this one out if you like your Euros, you like your tile placement games, and you like your kind of puzzly aspect to it as well. So yeah, that concludes the review. If you have enjoyed the video, please hit like and subscribe to my channel, and check out my other videos too. For everyone else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye.